It's been 27 years, but as Wilma and Cliff Derksen walk amongst their beautiful garden, their pain is still present. It was November 30th, 1984, when Candace, their oldest daughter, went missing.
Candace often called me from school to pick her up, and I usually did. But this time, because her best friend was coming in from Gimli, I was behind schedule. So I asked if she could walk home because it was warm. And then she just didn't come home.
Hours went by with no word from Candace.
Well, even though I had this sinking feeling, there was a hope, right? I called all her friends, and after that, I think it was maybe 6, 7 o'clock, we started calling the police. By then I had checked everywhere and we'd both driven, we'd panicked, right? We'd just absolutely panicked. And they didn't come in till about 10 or 11.
Well, the police have a time limit within which within which they start acting on a missing person. So this would way too early, according to their, official policies. And so, but they did put a car in the area, so they were doing something, but it wasn't officially a lost person at this point, or a missing person.
It took 3 days, but Candace officially became a missing person. And as the Derksens tried to comfort their other 2 children, it was hard for Wilma to find comfort for herself, knowing her little girl was somewhere out there, alone. Much of that anger that night, she says, was turned towards God.
And I have to admit that that first night, I had it out with God, and I felt she had died. And in some ways, as horrible as it is, I didn't want her to suffer.
But the anger was short-lived, as she quickly learned to rest on her faith to help her get through her worst nightmare.
Only God knew where Candace was. So I needed God, and I needed to have him close. So we created a relationship.
Then, 6.5 weeks after their 13-year-old had gone missing, they got the news they had been waiting for. Candace had been found.
Yeah, we'll never forget it. Actually, we were at the end of our rope, and we had one idea, one more lead. Not lead, it was just a guess.
It was a wild
guess.
Guesstimate. Yeah.
So we went to the police, and that's where they said that they'd been looking for us. And they then told us
at the police station. Then we were going there to give them what we thought was another way to go with
on their turf.
And we walk in the door, and they say, "Hey, we have something to tell you."
And because of that, we couldn't believe it.
Candace was dead, brutally murdered. Her body was found in an abandoned shed. But for the next 22 years, the Derksens didn't know who had done this to their daughter and their family. Until 3 years ago, when the police arrested Mark Edward Grant and charged him with first-degree murder in the case of Candace Derksen. This month, exactly 27 years after Candace's body was found, the man accused with her murder will face trial. But the amazing part of this story of loss is the story of hope. The Derksens haven't sat around idly for the past 27 years. They've been busy bringing a voice to those affected by crime. And in the weeks and months following Candace's disappearance, they were instrumental in bringing Child Find to Manitoba, an organization specifically set up to help parents and loved ones of missing children. Child Find Manitoba has now helped thousands of families.
People often would come to us and wonder why our case was so public. And because other people are losing children and nothing's happening, like nobody's supporting them or the very little resources. And our main reason was because we had to use the media to look for her. We really had to go to the media to do that, if that was going to happen. And we had a search committee, a whole community of people from the church and the community coming together. And that's what every parent needs. And Child Find does that.
Since the inception of Child Find Manitoba, families have been helped all over the province. And as Leanna McDonald, the executive director, points out, there aren't many other places families could turn to. But over the past 27 years, Child Find Manitoba has been able to grow and evolve as the issues surrounding child protection become more complex.
Well, really, Child Find Manitoba was, a pretty small organization in the early days. It was run by volunteers. We have not only grown to have over 30 staff, but Child Find has evolved into a national organization. And in fact, it was because we really looked at the face of missing children and recognized that kids were going missing as a result of an online encounter that we created Canada's tip line to report the online sexual exploitation of children, which is cybertip.ca. So now today, not only do we operate our core missing children service under the Child Find name, but we are also known to other Canadians as the Canadian Centre for Child Protection.
But that's not the only thing that was birthed out of the pain and loss of Candace Derksen. Wilma started another initiative, this one called Victim's Voice, a ministry in partnership with the Mennonite Central Committee, specifically geared to advocating for victims of crime.
It's really empowering the victim to find their voice, to tell their story, to reconnect back into their community and reconnect with the love and the energy that flows from one to the other. And that can heal them in a way that they can start to function again.
For Lisa Pomerath, whose father was brutally killed while her mother was pregnant with her, Wilma has showed her that it's all right to grieve the loss of a father she never knew. And receiving that help from a woman who has also experienced loss, she says, has helped the process even more.
Well, I think it makes a huge difference just to have somebody who has been through it, other than your parent, to have an outside source that understands but can also see it objectively and from the viewpoint of their experience. I think makes a huge difference. And it's also, Wilma specifically, I think she shows her vulnerabilities, and she shows that it's okay to be angry, that it's okay to have fear, that it's okay, and that it doesn't just magically go away. You know, just because it's been 25 years or 34 years for me, it doesn't mean that it just automatically goes away. She makes it okay to have the feelings and the emotions that you have.
In the years following Candace's death, Wilma says she was taught how to see hope in the midst of pain. And through Victim's Voice, her desire is to do the same with those she meets.
You know, I would sometimes wallow and I'd talk about Candace and I'd cry and cry and cry. And then they'd say, and what about your other children? You know, and it's so easy to focus only on your loss and not to realize I had 2 other gorgeous children. You know, and that's what I try to be there for them in that. Not to push them, not to condemn them, not to judge them, but to keep pushing people into realizing what it's all about, how big their lives are, and that there's still potential, still hope, and there might even be opportunity.
Well, we've taken
For Wilma, that opportunity has come in the form of reaching out to others, sharing in their pain, giving parents a place to turn to, and giving victims a voice. A promise she says she made to Candace, and one she intends to keep.
I'm more or less committed to Candace that if whatever happened to her, whether her life or her death, I would be there to help give it an impact. So by having that conversation, I committed myself to being in partnership with my God, to making something good come out of evil. And that is a mantra that I have, is that I believe that God isn't there to give us comfort or to make things easy for us. But what he has promised is that whatever we've been given in life, we can plant a flower and make something beautiful out of it. So that is my faith. I believe that God is there and will help create miracles, you know, create flowers in the desert, that kind of thing.
spent most of your life
In Winnipeg, Manitoba, Magdalene John,